NJ.com and the Star Ledger welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights, with your hosts Steve Politti and Rutgers insiders Brian Fonseca and Pat Lenny. Let's start chopping.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Rutgers Rant. Politti here, coming off a big win, 21-18. We all get ready there, and on Sunday, beat Washington. You're thinking, all right, here we go. The ranked football team we're covering. We're going to have a team in the AP top 25 for the first time since 2012. What was it, 2014? A long time ago. 2012. No, not even freaking close. Rutgers had 7 votes in the top 25. One of them is on this panel. Not great. I got to feel like it's two things. Brian, your voter, you tell me if I'm wrong. One, they're not generating a level of buzz amongst the voters and people who are not watching the games. People who vote in these polls can't watch every game, obviously. They're busy. They have to cover games. And two, they're not passing the eye test for the voters who are watching the games. Thoughts?
I think you nailed it. To be clear, 5 voters, 7 points.
Is that only 5? So some of them higher than you. Wow. Okay.
Yes, there were a couple that were 24. I put them at 25.
All right.
There were multiple factors. You're right. One, they have not beaten anybody that makes you go through the box score, because a lot of these voters, myself included, go through box scores. They're not watching 60-minute games, like you said, of every team. Rutgers has not passed the box score test. They have not gotten a win, whether that's the opponent or the margin, where you're like, whoa, that hasn't happened. Like you said, the voters watching them probably have not been impressed by them skating, narrowly making it by Virginia Tech and then beating Washington essentially because Washington could not stop shooting itself in the foot. They literally beat themselves to a degree I have never seen in my life. Even their coach was saying he saw penalties he has never seen in his entire life. That's what Rutgers needed to beat Washington. And look, I got to be honest, when I'm going through my poll, making it on Sunday morning, and I've expressed multiple times my internal dilemma with considering Rutgers here. There was like a lot of circumstances that made me, consider a lot of teams, right? Like you have Kentucky, who I ultimately didn't vote for, beating number 6 Ole Miss because Gavin Wimsatt with the old, fumble Ruski by accident, maybe on purpose, who knows? They beat number 6 Ole Miss, and they almost beat number 1 Georgia a couple weeks ago. UNLV, I ultimately voted them in, but they're 4-0. You have the nation's finest. You have Army and Navy. They're both 4-0 in a G5 league, right? That's worth consideration. A lot
19
of things.
4-0 teams, right? Is it 19 is the number I saw?
That sounds right to
19
me.
Undefeated teams, I should say.
Duke,
Yeah.
you said Duke. You mentioned Duke to me. They are 5-0, and they have a couple of Power 5 wins, and they got 0 votes. And then you got Pittsburgh, who is doing a tremendous propaganda campaign every Saturday night. I got an email in my with them like, "Oh, we beat 2 Power 5 teams, and we're 4-0." And I don't vote for them because I hate receiving propaganda.
Lobbied.
So lobbied, exactly.
Yeah.
I get turned off, but I'm sure it worked for a couple of people.
It's good. Yeah. Pat, one of those undefeated teams has you angry.
It does. Indiana.
Strong word, maybe, but
Indiana. I don't know. Angry might be a little too strong, but as you just said with the eye test, admittedly, I have watched 10 minutes of that Indiana UCLA game. Like, I know you watched more, but still, like, I have not watched a lot of Indiana football. That's why if I haven't voted in a football poll since the NJ.com top 20 high school football poll in 2020.
A much more important poll.
More important poll, to be honest. But I always judge resumes. What does your win stand up against this win? And to me, when I look at Indiana's 5 wins, none of them are impressive. None of them are as impressive as what Rutgers has wins over Washington and Virginia Tech. I think Rutgers' resume is just vastly better than Indiana's. Beating Washington and Virginia Tech is better to me than beating UCLA and Maryland. I don't
Indiana
really care
in front
that
of
they
me.
scored a lot
Florida
of points.
International, Western Illinois, UCLA, Charlotte, Maryland. So yeah,
Right. So
all double-digit wins, but yeah.
And Indiana's not just in the poll there. I think they're 23 and getting tons of votes, and Rutgers got 7. So I just see a big disparity there, and I don't agree with it at all.
As someone who voted Indiana above Rutgers, 2 arguments. One, the quality of wins are roughly the same. They beat a Big Ten, they beat a Power 5 team on the road, and they beat a good, not great team in the Big Ten at home. They destroyed UCLA on the road. They beat Maryland pretty handily in the fourth quarter. And the bad teams they played, they destroyed them. They won one game 77-3. Rutgers didn't score 77 points across. They scored 77 points across the first two games against Howard and Akron, right? Like, I agree the quality of wins is not much better than Rutgers. I just think they just beat the brakes out of every team they played pretty much.
You kind of have to just shrug it off. I mean, they're on the bubble. They're getting some votes. Haven't done enough. I think that's the takeaway. And it's not, if they were a couple votes away, it'd be one thing. I agree with the Indiana thing. Pittsburgh is kind of a weird one, but this is when this is like we were talking about the Rutgers basketball team a couple of years ago. You're sitting there and you're the last team out. Well, all right. Well, you went and you lost to Minnesota on the road. Or, it's just like stuff like that. That's all right. You did all you could, but other teams are doing a little bit more. So, and to your point, Brian,
2025 is a complete crapshoot. Just to be clear, for myself and pretty much every voter, 2025 is you could probably put 15 different teams in that slot. Right. A lot of it is. I don't know how much the brand. I know Rutgers fans are worried that the Rutgers brand, people see Rutgers as little old Rutgers from the early days of the Big Ten. Maybe they don't trust Rutgers. I can't speak to that. I would argue if you saw people like Nicole Auerbach on NBC and Anthony Herron on Big Ten Network telling people to rank Rutgers, you cowards, I think there's a little bit of a PR campaign that people want Rutgers to be ranked. So I don't know, but I'm just saying, once you're in that 20 to 25 range of consideration, Rutgers to me is one win away. If they beat Nebraska, I think they're getting ranked. They're right on the cusp of it, I'd say.
Nebraska too. No doubt.
Right. And it is hard to shake that feeling. You mentioned it earlier, Brian, just that they. I certainly at the game felt like Rutgers got a little lucky. In reviewing it, felt like Rutgers got a lot lucky in certain ways with the calls by Jed Fish, who's getting skewered in Washington for some of his decisions, some of the penalties. I mean, the sequence that I kind of forgot. I was in the stands watching it as it unfolded. I kind of was walking around in the second quarter when Washington blocked the field goal, had an illegal substitution penalty on the field goal, gave Rutgers the first time they scored a touchdown. You wrote about it that in your film review. That itself is a swing that could change the entire game. And this stat, I loved it. And you had it in the film reviews. Everyone should read. Teams who outgained their opponents by at least 222 yards last season went 282 and nothing. 282
How do you even
zero.
do that stat? How did you
Who
find
added that up?
I find that stat?
Who did this?
Data Dog found it on Twitter. I DM'd him to try to find it. So Sports Reference used to have a tremendous database that you could look stuff up like this, but they have done what every other corporation does and put it behind a paywall that I can't even find. So I imagine Data Dog had some. But he was the second person that mentioned it. So I'm incredible.
282. Yeah. So yeah, you're going to lose that game nearly every single time.
Absolutely. And we'll get into the Rutgers defense and all that later, but that is an incredible stat. I'll let Brian talk about that. I mean, that's just unbelievable, really.
Look, to your point, everything that could have gotten right for Rutgers essentially did, right? Every time Washington got a promising drive, they shot themselves in the foot. Their first missed field goal was because they had a 15-yard penalty that pushed them back, made it further, and the kicker missed it, albeit he should have made it, but still. That field goal is egregious. That illegal substitution. That was the penalty Jed Fish said, in my life, I've never seen, he didn't say this, but it's essentially he said, I've never seen anything like this. An illegal substitution while celebrating a field goal block while the ball is still in play. That's a 10-point swing or a 7-point swing because you go from a blocked field goal and recovering possession to the next play. Athan Kaliakmanis finds Ian Strong for a touchdown. And gifting Rutgers free drives, killing their own drives. Some curious 4th and 9, like the first drive they go for it on 4th and 9 near midfield. That felt weird. Some curious decision making. They went for it on 4th down near the goal line. That one didn't work out. Just very aggressive calling from Washington, combined with very, very undisciplined play from his team. Just kind of was the reason Rutgers won because again, this was a 3-point game that Washington could have sent to overtime if they had a decent kicker. Rutgers should really count its lucky stars.
It was terrible execution by Washington. Rutgers also didn't execute at a high level, but Washington came in as a team that, like, its MO is that they're one of the most penalized teams in the country. They had 16 flags against Washington. And, Rutgers is on the other end of the spectrum. That's one thing that at least Schiano's teams have always historically been disciplined. the penalties don't really stack up against them, and it just really made a difference in this game, clearly.
It's interesting because on the flip side of it, I thought that Greg Schiano, 1 week after having a game, we're all like, what the heck was that? I thought he called a really good game. I thought his decisions were right. Even some of the conservative ones, when you're punting like a 4th and 1, running out the clock there, it almost backfired with Washington get the ball back, but he did a lot of things well. And then the defense. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you gotta give him credit. They gave up 500 yards, yeah, but also some huge stops. They made the goal line stop. They did stop Washington deep a few times. I mean, they had some really important plays too. So while I'm not feeling comfortable, or certainly not, I don't know, going into a place like Nebraska with a defense that's given up as much as they're giving up, that's the same token that, the goal is to not let them score.
That is the goal. And the other key stat for the defense was that Washington was 2 of 12 on 3rd down. Right. So you add that in with the goal line stand, a couple great stops on 4th down beyond the goal line stand. And yeah, you're right. Like, they do deserve some credit. So it becomes a glass half full, glass half empty. Are you an optimist? Or are you a cynic? Right. Like, if you look at it from the points perspective, Rutgers is playing great defense. If you look at it, other teams are running up and down the field on them, glass half empty. So I think it's your view on that. I think it's a little bit of both. Like, you have to give them some credit, and you have to also knock them for what was supposed to be Rutgers' calling card this year. Was they were 16th nationally last season in yards allowed per game, and they got gashed in the last 2 games. So Schiano even said it himself in his post game. Like, there's a lot of room for improvement, and we have to be better defensively. I think that's obvious.
Yeah, I think we talked about this ad nauseum. This team, there's 2 major issues I see. They give up a ton of explosive plays through the air and on the ground, which allows teams to get into the red zone. And they don't create any game-changing plays themselves. They have 5 turnovers in 4 games, fine. And one of them literally won a game against Virginia Tech. Give credit where it's due there. But they're not turning the ball over enough. They're not getting to the quarterback. I should say they're not sacking the quarterback enough. I mean, and it's not for lack of effort. They're blitzing on about 40% of their, of obvious passing downs. And they have 1 sack off of, I think, 131 blitzes this season. Even with Daryl Jabomi, you saw that was a perfect example of the issues. Yeah. He gets right through the offensive line, gets to Will Rogers, touches him with 2 hands, and he just kind of ducks out of the way and completes a 15-yard pass. Like, you need those game-changing plays to kill drives, and Rutgers was not able to do that, which is why Washington would march down the field. And yes, they did get stopped on 3rd down, on 4th down, and in the red zone, because the one area they really excelled against Washington, they had 5 pass breakups, all of which came at huge times. Tyrone Powell on 4th down deflects a pass that would have turned a touchdown into a turnover on downs. Literally saves a touchdown. Robert Longerbeam, maybe the most underrated play of the game. He had a brutal stretch when Washington scored their 2nd touchdown. He made up for it by getting a pass breakup when Washington is driving down to score or to try to tie the game with a field goal. If he doesn't break up that pass, Washington is at the 30-yard line. It sets up like a 44-yard field goal, something like that. Much more manageable, and one that I think Washington makes. So he's a big reason Washington doesn't tie the game at the end. And I'm trying to think. Shaquan Loyal, a 3rd down pass breakup. Like, just Flip Dixon had one that kind of held them back on their scoring drive. Just these plays that came up at opportune times. But again, I think if you're Rutgers, you want a defense that gives up less yardage and creates more havoc. Knocks down the quarterback, gets tackles for loss. 0 sacks and 0 tackles for loss in a Big Ten game almost certainly will not be enough to win. Again, this game was completely special circumstances. It's probably never going to happen again.
All right. Offensively, when this game started, I thought Athan had that first 3 throws were bad behind receivers. I was getting that feeling like, all right, we might be back to where we were, where he's better, but still not good enough to win games like this. Flipped the script, then made some really big throws, some over the middle throws. The touchdown to Strong was a great throw. And they still trust. I can't say how important that is, that they trust him to drop back on a 3rd and 10 to 3rd and long to make throws like that. Numbers aren't great, but he doesn't need the numbers. It's 14-24, 115, I think. They just need him to be a competent passer. We're seeing that again. He passed another test for me.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go. Sorry.
To your point on trust, exactly. He misses his first 3 passes relatively badly. On his second drive, Rutgers is about to stall, facing a 3rd and 10. Kirk Ciarrocca puts the ball in his hands and tells him to throw it down the middle on a slant to Chris Long for a first down, and he completes it. I don't think that's a play Rutgers calls last year, let alone completes with Gavin Wimsatt at quarterback. I just don't think that just the fact that the play was called, not even that it was converted, is a huge sign in a positive direction for Rutgers. That was across 4 games. He has now converted 5 third downs of at least 7 yards with his arm, 5 times in 4 games. Rutgers converted 8 of those all of last year, right? And I think they had 37 pass attempts in those situations. Athan is a guy that is not going to beat opposing teams with deep balls and impressive athleticism. He didn't attempt a 20-yard pass or longer for the second time in 4 games, but he's going to make the key throws. He's going to move the ball. He's going to make right decisions. It looks like he's getting them in and out of the right play calls. And if his receivers helped him out a little bit, KJ Duff is a true freshman. It's his 4th game. You could understand. He had a clear touchdown if he catches a ball that hit him right on the chest, right in the numbers. Maybe not a touchdown, but at least near the goal line. Like, he had a clear lane to run into. And there was another drop that Kenny Fletcher, not as bad, but it was a short pass that he had some space to run into. Again, just missed opportunities there that could have helped add to the 115 yards, which is not that huge. And again, I just want to throw this out there. I don't mean to steal Pat's thunder if he's going to bring this up later. But another game, another screen pass, another successful screen pass. Ian Strong flying through the heavens on a screen pass to get a first down. The Rutgers Rant, and specifically Pat, because he's been on this train for a long time, has revitalized the Rutgers offense by introducing the tunnel screen.
It's incredible. And maybe it's just because the NFL has such athletic linemen that get out into space, but you watch football on Sunday, and there are so many screens to the running back, and it's such a successful and easy play, and you see it on 3rd and long, and it works. But I just don't know. Maybe it's just Rutgers doesn't have the athletic linemen to get out into space. I don't know what it is, but Rutgers has still never thrown a screen to a running back under Ciarrocca. Yeah, I've watched every game. It's not happened. The tunnel screen is a great play, though.
Yeah, we're gonna have to change it. We Rutgers Rant brought back the screen pass, but however, I've got some bad news. We did not kill the horn.
No,
we did not kill the horn. We did not. No, it was horn in full, like, national TV game, and it's clear. Absolutely, Brian. You've said this a bunch. I've kind of gone back and forth on it, but clearly the horn exists only to censor the students who are chanting F Penn State. It's gotta be what it is. I mean, that's the big thing, because the horn was absolutely over hornation, crazy horn level. People complaining about the horn. You want to talk about the atmosphere, though, because that is a minor thing. And I put this in the notes. Like, I get when I bring up my weekly tweet about the crowd that people seem obsessed with. When I tweet, like, oh, come on, Rutgers, where are you? What? Like, one week I got a response that was like, well, what do you want? This is what I want. This is it. That was the crowd. That's it. That's the atmosphere. That's the people there early. Student section jammed. I mean, I get it's a night game, so they could do a little more entertainment wise, but I mean, A++ for the stadium ops group, PJ Mullen and his crowd. It was just a professional level production. It rose to the band. You remember when we used to talk about the band, like the best in the band could do, like 10 years ago? It would do the R in one direction, and then it would flip. Ooh, they're flipping the R to the other side of the stadium. Now they've got like a light show. They turned the lights off, and it's just stuff going on. The sound's great. The band sounds great. Fireworks got going up there. The sing-alongs were great. And it's funny because I got this comment from a couple people who are like, it didn't seem like the crowd was engaged as much in the game as they had been for some other big games. And I kind of got that feel as I was walking around, because it felt like a cocktail party, like big crowds they have they take on the vibe sometimes, like the Louisville 2006 crowd was, everyone's like, oh my God, I can't believe we're here. This is so great. And then Penn State was just angry. Like, we are so mad at it was like, everyone was angry. And this one was kind of like, hey, look, we're back. This is cool.
Yeah.
It was like a social thing. That's okay. You're still
okay.
there.
That's okay.
You don't have to live and die in every play, right? I don't know. I just thought it was just overall just one of the better crowds I've ever seen.
It felt like an absolute party. more so than like a intense hanging on every moment. And that's fine. Like, right. Like, that's totally fine. That's great. I would argue that's great. Right. Like, they put New Jersey on full display. And one of the things Greg Schiano said afterwards was like, we want to make New Jersey a place where college football is special the way it is in the SEC or Nebraska, right? Like, Rutgers and New Jersey gets dogged because, there's so many professional teams and college football can't exist in this market. What you saw Friday night is a perfect example of this is going to be a popular ticket. It's going to be fun to come to these games and everything. And maybe you're going to get a good product on the field too, which at the end of the day is all that really matters. But yeah, the song choices were fantastic. The turning the lights off, people flashing their cell phone lights, like Dream On was really cool. You know, of course, you got Born to Run and Bon Jovi in there, right? Like iconic New Jersey things after the game too. Just really well done. The blackout was, we knew coming into the season when we saw that this was going to be a Friday night blackout game that against the reigning national runner-up, that this was going to be the chance for Rutgers to do something special. And by all accounts, everyone stepped up and lived up to that expectation.
Few quick things. One, baby steps here. Students stayed all the way through the end of the game. The student section was packed for that last field goal, very loud, which is exactly why they need to have the train horn, because those FPS chants were going insane before that big play. Second of all, the next step is they stayed all the way through. They packed out the stadium by the second quarter. Show up early and fill the stadium before, because I saw it at Virginia Tech, and I am almost certain I will see it at Nebraska this upcoming weekend. That place gets packed before kickoff, and that's kind of just the what you got to do to further help the team. They had a great video on the Rutgers football Twitter account of them running out of the tunnel. I think, and it was great perspective for me because I've always wondered what that would be like and kind of the feelings of doing that, whatever. I think that would be a lot stronger if they come out and the 200 levels are a little bit more filled in and the 100 levels are completely filled in. But again, baby steps. And I do want to say, I empathize with fans because I heard a lot of complaints about getting in, the insane traffic on 18, on 287, the buses coming from College Ave were a little delayed. And I heard a lot of complaints about getting out. And that's kind of the cost of putting 50,000 people in a building. It's going to be really hard to navigate the logistics of all of it. And the biggest point of all this, I said it in our rapid reaction video. I want to reiterate it here. This was a humongous opportunity for Rutgers. People showed up and Rutgers pulled through and won the game. People will actually be inclined to come back for the next time this opportunity comes and not feel like, why would I do that? Spend 3 hours, all my energy, all my money for nothing. That was, to me, the biggest part of the night.
Yeah. The upper deck stuff, I hear they got this a bunch from people. Like, you know, it's like when I tell my son to clean his room and I go in there and there's still like a couple cans lying on the ground. Like there's a wrapper. You know, all right. I can't expect perfection. Right. This is the same way I feel about Rutgers crowds. I mean, I get it. I think a lot of people do stand downstairs, especially the student beat. It's like 8 deep behind the student section. Every seat's filled. And then there's a bunch of people standing there. You know, I don't know why people don't sit upstairs. Maybe those seats aren't. So I don't know. It's a great question. But I agree with you on the getting there. And I do love, and I feel bad because it's hard. Like it took me an hour and 40 minutes from Montclair to get down to, so an extra hour to get down to the parking lot from door to door. It's tough. People have to do weird things. I saw Fooch running, like he had to get dropped. So much traffic. It was late for the pregame show to get dropped off on River Road. And I'm looking like out my car window, right? It's like, what is that? Why is there a madman running along the side of running through the woods along River? That's dangerous. And no, that's Fooch. That's the Rutgers sideline reporter running along there. You got to do to get to the game. If Fooch can run on the side of River Road, you folks can figure out how to get there quicker. All right, maybe that's a bit much.
Campaign slogan: Rutgers Rant 2024. If Fooch can do it, you can too.
You can do it too. All right. We got a bunch of fan engagement comments in the questions. You want to just dive into them for a minute? Sure. All right, let's see what we got here. Trying to think. What's the Game Day Operation Crew did a fantastic job. It was easy for fans to get into it. They get a 1 point deduction. If you're going to spend all that money on pop and circumstance, at least have a horse entrance where he gallops around campus in the dark. Kind of foos to have that video shot in daytime, and then he runs out 8 p.m. in the dark. They got to do a new horse video. Wow, talking about picking some nits here. We are good. Here's a question: Did the Rutgers band nix the first down touchdown go RU Knights song? Didn't hear it Friday night. I don't know. Do you guys notice that?
I don't think I heard it either.
Yeah, didn't hear it.
Too busy typing.
It does. Yeah, too busy. I do think there is this constant tug of war between what we've always worked with, they've always done, and what they want to do new stuff. So they're constantly, when they add stuff, they don't let them take stuff away. So maybe that's something they took away. Gus from Flemington made the same observation a lot of people did about a fan who was at the Louisville game in 2006 and South Florida game 2 years later, felt the engagement level by fans was better at those two games than last night. He also said those games didn't have all the theatrics of pregame, halftime, and postgame. Great atmosphere, but fan engagement wasn't there. We talked about it a little bit. I think maybe, those games are also later in the season, more important. Maybe we should check back on this. If Rutgers is sitting there at 7-2 or something later in the year, with games might mean more.
Sure. I did notice less like RUs going back. I remember like the Louisville game,
right,
nonstop, like really powerful. Hearing that ring out through the stadium and the echo of that being like an iconic moment, along with the storming of the field and all. Right. But yeah, I think it was just a bigger circumstance for the Louisville game, right? They're ranked so high. Rutgers, there's just more at stake, right? Everyone's going to be more engaged. At the end of the day, this is an early season game, that first in the Big Ten. So yeah, I think you're right. We should definitely check back in.
And there are some people that mentioned people leaving early. I mean, part of it is Brian, you pointed this out. We're sitting in the press box and like, the game's so freaking long. The number of commercials on these night games. I mean, holy crap. I thought, and the penalties too, like the reviews early on for targeting, that is just not the eye test right away. That's not targeting. And sure enough, we'll spend 5 minutes looking at it. It's not targeting. So what was it? 3 hours, 38 minutes, and it was 2 hours and 12 minutes of actual time, Brian? Is that what you calculated?
Yes, it was 3 hours and 33 minutes of real time, and the Big Ten Plus replay was 2 hours and 12 minutes. So one could deduce that you take out halftime and some other minor things, that's roughly an hour of commercials, which I hope nobody buys anything that was advertised for that hour just to stick it to these people, because I know that's why these schools are getting $75 million in payouts, and that's all well and good. I'm getting 0 cents, and I don't want to deal with this nonsense. It was midnight by the time the game ended, and then by the time Greg Schiano talked to us, it was 2 a.m. So
right. we don't have to worry about the traffic, thanks to Greg. He makes sure that we don't get out of there with any cars in the lot. So thank goodness for that.
Yes, but all jokes aside, yes, I get why it happens. It is ridiculous. And I saw someone say like, "Oh, Rutgers is now understanding what it's like to play in a national television game because this is what happens to teams like Nebraska and Ohio State all the time." My goodness, give me Big Ten Network at noon anytime over this. This is unbearable. I can't imagine watching from home.
It is hard to get out, but I think, and I heard this from a couple of people, that they did make it easier to get in, and I think you owe Board of Governors chairwoman / superfan Amy Towers for that. From what I understand, that she heard all these complaints. She's at the games, all these people complaining about why are they searching through every nook and cranny of my bags, and I think that things got a little easier to get into that stadium. Just overall, I think that was a big complaint I heard. Readers do not like your bag rant, by the way, Brian. I've got kids. I've got people like, I got kids. I got to bring a bag. I'm a woman. I got to bring a bag. So they can't travel as easy as you. Just pointing it out.
The one I felt bad about was one guy was like, I'm diabetic. You want me to, not bring my insulin? I'm like, okay, that's a very fair point. I can understand that. The kids, fair enough. You want to bring your kid to a Rutgers game? Fine. Maybe just leave them at home. I don't know. But you're right. I don't have any kids. I don't understand. I don't understand the logistics of getting a babysitter. I empathize. Fair enough. Maybe I was being a little hyperbolic. Shocker. But just leave your bags in the car.
Yeah. I have kids. I wouldn't bring them either. It's a lot of work. Everything's a lot of work with kids. More questions. This is a really good one. About the floor for this team now. Now that we are 4-0, what is the floor and wins for the season? Is it realistic to think that we can go 4-4 from here and get to 8 wins? Is more than 8 wins now a realistic possibility? Pete from Dallas. All right. So I went into ESPN's does the little matchup predictor thing. And I was not surprised, but certainly, ESPN's bullish on you getting at least 8. And according to that, right now, Rutgers is the favorite in the matchup to go 9-3, which is, so obviously pretty bullish on the Scarlet Knights. The 3 games they're not, they only have a 15.9% against USC, 34.1% against Nebraska. And I was a little surprised, but this is the low number. Maryland, 36.2% otherwise. So Rutgers, 70% to beat Wisconsin, 81% to beat UCLA, 65% Minnesota, 56% Illinois, and 56% Michigan State. So toss-ups, those are the swing states of this election, I guess. But for the most part, I think the numbers say that the floor in this team, it's certainly a bowl team. If it's not a bowl team, it's just a disaster, and it should be a pretty good bowl team.
You would think. ESPN actually, in that same FPI poll, says that Rutgers has a 96% chance of getting the 6 wins and becoming bowl eligible. So that's 96% at this point. So that's pretty high. And think about this, right? Rutgers preseason win total for betting in sports books was 6.5 wins. So if you were a smart gambler, you would have been all over that. So I don't know, just something there. Just show how. We were obviously. I predicted 10-2. Of all people to be talking about this, you were 9-3, Brian. I think 8-4. So we were all bullish from the start. I think this is exactly. We all predicted a 4-0 start. I think Rutgers has played up to what we thought coming into the season. I think people on the outside that look at little old Rutgers and Rutgers 72-0 against Michigan type Rutgers are now realizing that, hey, this is a pretty good team. But if anyone was paying attention, everyone was saying this, right? Like we wrote 100 times, this ESPN analyst said this magazine has predicted this. So I think everyone, I think the floor and ceiling remain the same in my eyes.
I totally agree. And I think a big deciding factor here is the next 4 games before the next bye. You have at Nebraska versus Wisconsin versus UCLA at USC. If you win 2 games there, which I think Rutgers really should, I think they should beat UCLA, and then I think they should steal at least one of the other 3. Then you're in a great position to get 9 wins, maybe 10 wins. If you go 1-3 somehow, then we're talking about 7-5, 8-4 probably being the ceiling. I tend to think they'll win at least 2. I'll put my money on UCLA, obviously, and one of the next 2 games against Nebraska and Wisconsin. I think you do that, you remain on schedule, and you could be at 9-3 and going to the Citrus Bowl or something like that.
Obviously, I watch because of, again, another Friday night game gives you the opportunity to watch the other actions. Watched a lot of Nebraska. It was 3-0 at halftime against Purdue. I was just again claw between that and the Jets game. Claw my eyes out watching football. Obviously, they played a lot much better in the second half. Blew them out. You saw their skill there. Still have a great quarterback. Still some good skill positions, but they're not. They're not Ohio State. They're not Penn State. They're not even Michigan back, and they're not great. And the other one, watching Wisconsin. I get it, a higher level of competition, but they didn't look good. So I think we've talked a lot about the schedule, but once again, the results are bearing it out that this is certainly the most favorable Big Ten schedule Rutgers has ever had by a long shot.
Wisconsin, to me, sorry, go ahead, Pat.
One other quick thing, when we were talking about ESPN's computer algorithms, and the rankings are just sometimes these computer algorithms are just mind blowing, right? SP Plus from ESPN has Virginia Tech still ahead of Rutgers by 1 spot. I cannot stand when you have a team that wins head to head and is still behind them. That just kills me. Of course, we didn't get to watch the full Virginia Tech Miami game, right? They did all they could to push a really good team to the wire. Maybe should have won the game, whatever. But that eye test is just so ridiculous to me.
That Virginia Tech near upset over Miami is what kind of put me over the edge to vote for Rutgers, if I'm being honest with you. I was going to vote them in if they beat Miami. They almost beat Miami. Controversial call at the end, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, I see your point. I totally see your point. Rutgers won head-to-head. They should be ahead of them in the computers. Wisconsin, to me, is interesting. They're down a starting quarterback, but this is Wisconsin we're talking about. They've never been a quarterback-led team. They're going to run the ball down your throat and be bigger than you in every other position. But it's hard to get a gauge on them because 2 of their losses are against top 15 teams. They lost to the number 1 team in the country in Alabama, who looked like a juggernaut against Georgia, and then they lost against USC this weekend. So I have a hard time gauging how good they are. I was pretty surprised at that number you threw out, Steve, from the FPI, that Rutgers is favored against them. I know they're home, but
70%. Yeah.
That's too much to me. I think Rutgers will be maybe a pick 'em, a slight favorite, but that's going to be if Rutgers beats Wisconsin, we're talking about statement wins. Beating one of these teams that's always been good to great in the Big Ten, that to me would be a real sign of Rutgers taking it to the next level.
All right. We had a lot of comments and questions about the defense, and it's funny because like everyone's got it speaks to what's going on with the defense that everyone seems to have a different theory of what's wrong, and it's all 3 position groups. Like, how do they fix the secondary is one of them. Our D line looks too small. Another one. The other one's like, is it me or our linebackers have a bad game? So that's, that does speak to it. I think the one theme that comes across in a lot of these is like, how do we generate more pressure on the quarterback? John from Edison, lack of quarterback pressure is putting pressure on the secondary. Does Greg feel like there's a problem and what adjustments need to be made? Got to come from blitzing, I think, at this point. I don't know. How do they get more pressure on the quarterback?
They do get pressure on the quarterback. They do. They just don't stack the quarterback.
They just don't get them.
Yeah.
They blitz 40% of the time. I don't know how that compares to the rest of the country.
Is that right? 40% of the time? That's
very
high. I didn't realize that. Wow.
I believe that's on passing downs, right? I don't have the full break. I don't think it's 40% of snaps, but 40% of obvious passing downs they're blitzing. And they have 1 sack off of those blitzes. They attack the quarterback. They get to him. Aaron Lewis, I think, is a great example of this. Like, he's a guy that's consistently in the backfield, but he just does not get to the quarterback. And that's the same across the board. The issue is not creating pressure. The issue is getting the quarterback on the ground. How do you fix it? I have no idea, because if I did, I'd be having Joe Harris-Simiak's job. It's not an easy thing to fix. I'm not sure.
I remember I'm going to say excuse, because the excuse early on was, okay, Howard's quarterback was very fast, very athletic, tough to bring down, couldn't get to him. It is what it is. Kyron Drones, athletic, tough to tackle quarterback. But here is Will Rogers, a guy that's a pure pocket passer, and they still couldn't sack him. So that is very concerning to me. You can't make that excuse that he was outside the pocket and you're chasing him and all that, right? You had every opportunity. Dariel Jabome, you said it before, had him, couldn't bring him down. Aaron Lewis, another example. So yeah, it's above my pay grade to steal a line from Governor Murphy.
I just think that at this point, 4 games through, it's a very clearly an issue. It was an issue that Greg Ciarrocca mentioned in the preseason, so they are aware of it, and they just haven't fixed it. And in fairness, it's not like they added some premier pass rusher through the transfer portal, right? They were kind of hoping that the development would work for guys like Wesley Bailey and Aaron Lewis, and just so far it hasn't. And they've won 4 games without sacking the quarterback, right? So it hasn't held them back yet. But at some point, it's going to cause them to lose a game because a quarterback is going to run roughshod on them and throw for 500 yards because they just can't get the quarterback on the ground.
Yeah,
and could be this week. Yeah,
right. If you're facing, you're right. Recipes there. You just go back to remember the season opening press conference with Schiano talking about how much Mo Touré's absence or season-ending injury, how much that changed things for this defense. You think about a great pass rusher, a guy that brings a lot of stability to the linebacker experience to the linebacker core. That's certainly a big part of it. And, but yeah, the grand scheme of sacking the quarterback is a big issue is now a season and a half long. So it's still unfixed.
With the quarterback, we have been talking for years of like, there are hundreds of quarterbacks across the country who could hit a simple pass down the middle of the field. Why can't Rutgers get one? It looks like Rutgers this year did get one. And I guess the inverse now is there are hundreds of edge rushers across the country who could beat a tackle and get to the quarterback and get him down. why does Rutgers not have a guy who can do that? It just seems I really am scratching my head consistently at this conundrum. I just do not understand why they aren't able to get the quarterback down.
Conversely, right, Steve? Rutgers always had great pass rushers and guys that was kind of an identity of Rutgers in Schiano 1.0, creating havoc on defense, right?
Yep, no question. Absolutely. Yeah, that's why I think it surprises me. Why I am surprised to hear that number of blitzing. Yeah, it's I'm not ready. I guess I will say this. I'm not ready to throw in the towel on it. Like, it's still a relatively small sample size, although a couple of those opponents obviously are not high level teams. Let's see what they do in the next few games. I don't think that this is not a Nebraska offensive line from Tom Osborne days. It's certainly not a Wisconsin offensive line. They lined up for like a 4th and 1 in the shotgun. And I think half of the cheeseheads must have fainted when they see that. It's like, what happened there? So yeah, I mean, maybe it's a matter of circumstances, and they'll rise to the occasion in the next couple of games. So
to be clear on the blitzes, it's 40% of dropbacks. That's the number. 40% of the time that opposing quarterbacks drop back to pass, Rutgers blitzes. Just wanted to be clear. I said obvious passing downs.
It's very high still. I would think very high.
So.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah. All right, let's dive into some other stuff. Raj G on the Twitter had a question. Why didn't Schiano use Sam Brown in that last drive to get the first down? And Monunga had 27 carries, and they still used him to run 3 times and failed to get the first down. Would have thought the fresher back would have been the option there. A lot of people retweeted this. I get the sense that people thought that this was a valid question. Ball protection. I think they trust Kyle Monunga not to fumble. And obviously that's a situation where you do not want to turn the ball over. And they just think the two backs are very even. I don't think interchangeable. I mean, we talked about which one had the better run. Certainly Kyle Monunga had the bigger workload, but I'm not surprised by that either. What do you guys think?
I'm not surprised by it either. Monunga has more experience. They're both great between the tackles. And wasn't on second down, wasn't a read option, and Athan pulled it, so it wasn't 3 straight running back runs, right? I think Kaliakmanis ran it on second down.
Correct.
So, yeah, I think Monunga's the guy in that situation for me, for sure.
I think it's a fair question. I really do, and it made me think about it when I saw it. I think you're right, Steve. Like, Kyle Monunga is the more experienced, better player. He's the better running back, and you want to get the yardage. And this team, in almost every facet, is more conservative. They would rather keep the ball and punt it away than risk fumbling the ball if that means a better chance of getting a first down. I think Sam Brown might have been the better option because he is the big bruiser back who gets the tough yards in a situation where Washington knows you're going to run the ball. It's not a bad choice to go with Kyle Monunga, though.
The thing you say, I mean, that obviously the highlights of the 2 runs that we kind of jokingly talked about. I put a poll on the Facebook on the Twitter page is asking which was the better run. Most people agree with you, Brian. The better run was the Kyle Monunga 40-yarder where he broke 4 tackles, made a spin move. It was just incredible. The thing that amazed me about the Sam Brown run was that he knocked a guy, like bulldozed a linebacker, I think, maybe a safety. I don't know exactly. And then outran a smaller guy to the end zone, which to me was like, and we have Andy Mills photo. There's a great photo of him where he looks like he's on one foot. Like, how did he keep his balance there? The guy is physically talented on a different level, probably more so, certainly just a physical specimen than Kyle. Interesting. Yeah, that's why you're glad you have both of them. You don't have to. You don't have to pick. We don't have to pick a better one. I love both my kids the same. All right. One-two punch. All right. Some other questions. This is a fun one. Black uniforms. Since there are so many red teams in the Big Ten, what about making our official uniform the black ones? They're the best looking helmets we have. What do you think? John from Edison. We could call them the Black Knights. Is there any other team named the Black Knights? Be good. Scratch. Oh, yeah. That might be one in the region that's significant. It certainly was a great look. I think there's 155 years of history that you can't really, punt on here. But
and believe me, Rutgers likes punting. But not
all right. So we're not. So John, we're going to stick with Scarlet just for now. All right. Another question Eric wants to know on the Twitter is the lack of a punt and kick return game because of a lack of a late returner, prioritize the punt block, or an ultra conservative method of preventing turnovers. I don't know, but I will say, like, I think back to after the safety, like that to me against Virginia Tech, where they got the safety and they still fair caught the ball on a free kick. I mean, they're not trying. Clearly, they're not trying to have any punt return game whatsoever.
It's so true. And it's really fascinating too, because we kept hearing Ben Black is this so fast, going to be a great returner. And yet I don't even know if he's out there on kickoffs anymore. I know he was for the first game or two, but now it's been Dremel all the time, exclusively on punts and kicks. I know on punts, Rutgers lines up for the punt block, I would say 9 out of 10 times, and would rather put emphasis on putting extra people in for a punt block than return. So I know that for a fact. Kickoffs is I don't even know what to say. Like you're not even trying to return the ball on a kickoff is, in my eyes, not a winning formula. But again, above my pay grade.
Mm-hmm. The answer to this is the same answer for most decisions in this program. Ultra conservative, make the other team beat you, don't make mistakes. Which, listen, that worked out. You could say whatever you want about that philosophy. That was the reason Rutgers won on Friday. They did not make mistakes, and the opponent did. Now, I do want to ask you guys this, because I mentioned it in the press box, and I said I'd bring it up in the pod. Washington punts the ball, or kicks the ball. No, punts the ball at the end of the game. And Christian Dremel is at the goal line, and he fair catches the ball. And I'm screaming, why didn't he just let the ball go out back through the back of the end zone or through the sideline?
All right. Because you're bringing this up.
I am, because what if he muffs it? What if he muffs it?
This is the thing that Fuchs is going to mention on, because you're just so wrong about this. What do you mean? What if he muffs it? What if the ball bounces and Washington has a gunner who catches it? Then it's first down Washington.
It was the corner of the end zone.
Kickoff. This is not a punt.
It was. First of all, it was not even close to going in the end zone. That ball was going to bounce at the 1 or the 2. Maybe it bounces into the end zone, right? But there's also a chance that it bounces the wrong way, hits someone. There's a million.
Could have been a 60-yard onside kick. It was a kickoff, not a punt. That was the problem.
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
I still think, I feel very strongly about this, that you got to let that ball go out of bounds so you can get to the 35 or behind you.
This is so much worse than Virginia Tech -10. So much worse.
This is totally worse. This is a very simple one. It's stunning. Yeah, it's like, we're not going to talk about that, because then people are going to question our football credentials the rest of the year. And then you brought it up.
I did say I would bring it up, so I did bring it up. And listen, I'm giving everyone a chance to rag on me. Fair enough.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, if that's what you want. If that's what you want,
that's right.
But I'm not bringing this up as a troll or anything. I sincerely believe this, and I think there will be people that agree with me. I really do, but we'll see.
Okay.
I think this is a Twitter poll. What's worse? Virginia Tech -10, failing to catch the kickoff, opting to not catch the kickoff.
I will clip the video and post it on Twitter and have a poll on our Rutgers Rant Twitter account, and I think I will win the poll.
Okay. I'm gonna take a side bet on that poll. We only have like 15 people voting on that Twitter, so there's a chance you might win it, but you're wrong. It's the word I'm looking
odds,
for.
Baby.
Wrong. All right. Where the heck was I? Special team. Yeah, I mean, special teams. Rutgers wasn't great on special teams, but I mean, talk about seeing some bad special teams play. And I guess it trickled over to Sunday for me, because I watched the Jets game where both teams missed a field goal that should have won the game for them. Well, eventually, obviously, the miss did win the game for the Broncos. But yeah, I mean, Nebraska couldn't hit a field goal. I mean, Washington couldn't hit a field goal. There's a lot of bad operations out there. So on some level, Rutgers should be, grateful that they're. Go ahead.
And Jacob Anderson was really good in this game. The Rutgers punter had some really good kicks in this game, and definitely deserves a shout out. He was good. He's been very solid. I thought maybe I was a little skeptical first game or two, but I thought he had his best game. And I don't have the stats in front of me, but I think his stats are going to show that he had a great game. But just from the eye test, I thought he was exceptional in that game.
All right, we're running along. I want to start. We'll try to get more questions for the end of the week pod when we preview the Nebraska game. But I want to talk about the hoop scrimmage because I have not talked to you, Brian, about it, and I'm curious myself. Give us the 4-1-1 hoop scrimmage Saturday. Nice crowd. What are the takeaways?
Yeah, great crowd. First of all, I mean, if 1,500 people, probably 2,000 on a rainy Saturday. People fired up to see Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, and I thought they lived up to the hype. You know, I think they didn't have crazy stat lines or anything, but some really impressive drives to the basket from Dylan Harper, which was his calling card in high school. And I think it's encouraging to see him do it against, a competent, good college basketball defender in JaMychal Davis, who, by the way, to me looked really improved from last year. I was impressed with JaMychal Davis. Again, one scrimmage, hard to take big picture, but he stood out to me. Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, Steve Peichel consistently talks about how great they are as passers, and I always brush that off because it seems like Steve wants to talk about anything other than scoring, but I got to give it to him. They were exceptional. Ace Bailey should have had 3 assists in the first half where his teammates kind of bobbled the passes, but I think it was because the passes were so next level that they just were not expecting them to come. Just exceptional. And that's something that I would have attributed to Dylan Harper more than Ace.
Me too. About to say that too. Yeah, I know that Dylan Harper is a great passer. I'm surprised. Very interesting to me. Not that he shoots. You wouldn't have guessed that. Huh.
It was very, really, really impressive stuff that I saw, really stood out to me. And I mean, again, it's a scrimmage. Maybe he's feeling a little trying to put on a show. Some questionable shots from Ace Bailey. Again, that's going to be an issue that's going to last all season, I think. Just kind of the cost of doing business with a top 5 NBA draft potential pick. Dylan Harper looked controlled, had the ball in his hands most of the time, and looked really, really good. And everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves. Questions I had, shooting was not great outside. PJ Hayes hit 2 of 3 on threes. Everyone else really struggled to hit some threes. I'm curious to see how good this team is on the perimeter. That to me is a big question. Center, neither of the guys really impressed me. Frankly, the first half, I was really concerned about Emmanuel Ogbole. Got better in the second half, kind of eased some concerns, but I'm just not convinced by either of those guys yet. I don't think.
You don't think Somerville's got a shot because there's a lot of buzz about him.
People are asking. I saw that. I think the prevailing theory that he can ramp up and become a starter by January is possible, but I think he gives up a lot on the defensive end, and I think Ogbole gives up a lot on the offensive end. And I think if you could fusion both of them, as I said on a previous episode, then you'd have a pretty good Big Ten center. But Lathan Somerville is much more of a perimeter center. He shoots more shots mid-range. He took a 3. Didn't really bang inside with Ogbole or Martini, whereas Ogbole is a guy in the paint. He's going to get the ball, try to dunk it, try to shoot over his defender. And again, he struggled, missed a couple dunks. Some worrying signs in the first half, I'd say. I'm not writing the guy off just yet, but I had concerns coming in, and they only got worse. And then the supporting cast, Jeremiah Williams looked okay. He looked roughly what he was last year, which I think is good. Again, PJ Hayes looks good shooting threes. Zach Martini was not very involved offensively, but you could kind of tell he's like one of the leaders on the team, moving guys around on the floor. Bryce Dortch had a couple of nice cuts to the basket and finishes, which is encouraging. I don't think he'll play much this season, but it's good to see him having some life there. And Dylan Grant hit a 3. I think he'll play a bit of a role. Tyson Acuff didn't play. I know I'm all over the place. Do you have any specific questions about the scrimmage?
Nope, you covered them. I was curious about the center position to see how that looked. They looked head to head. I guess the question is not answered and probably won't be for a while. So, yeah.
If people want to get it, look up for themselves. I uploaded highlights from the scrimmage, pretty much the entire scrimmage, on our Rutgers Rant YouTube page. Check it out. I think aside from the 1 or 2 play where I forgot to switch the sides of the court, so you missed it. Most of it's there. Make observations for yourself, but those were, I think, the takeaways for most people watching on Saturday.
The other thing, we're not forgetting this, but the other thing about the 3 they're missing from 3-pointers, that doesn't surprise me. They couldn't make a layup last year either. Like the fact that you've got 2 guys who can hit, around the basket. Like we know Dylan Harper is just an excellent finisher from watching him at Don Bosco. It's no small thing, Pat.
Free throw shooting, which is right. So yeah, curious about that. But yeah, excellent finishers at the basket, obviously, and Tyson Acuff as well, right? He's a good finisher and scorer in general too. So maybe when he comes back, that'll be a nice addition.
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure. Free throws were okay. I think I had it at 13 of 17. I might be off. I did the numbers unofficially, but it wasn't terrible. And the numbers at the rim, I didn't calculate them. They seemed good off of my memory, but one caveat is that we're not seeing high-level Big Ten defense. This is a lot like an NBA All-Star game where defense is kind of optional. So I think hard to take away big things from there. But they were finishing their layups at the rim when they got there, aside from Ogbole, who missed a couple of dunks.
All right. Women's soccer heads up to Michigan, gets a win against Michigan, ties number 1 Michigan State. 8 straight games without a loss, ends the weekend tied for first place in the Big Ten with Iowa. Still not ranked. Is that right?
I don't think so.
I haven't seen the women's soccer poll this morning. Not something I wake up looking at. Wow. Why not? Huh. Talk about an outrage. That's more of an outrage than the football team.
That's crazy. First place in the Big Ten.
Mike O'Neill should be fighting mad. Sorry.
Yeah. So no, it's fine. They're undefeated since Gia German. They still have not lost the game since Gia German. 1 went on the Rutgers Rant, and 2 had the incident at UMass. Just saying. And field hockey beats number 7 Iowa.
Wow.
Best win of the weekend, I would say. And they're not having
a penalty shootout. I actually watched that before I left for the football game. I was like, I'm gonna stay till the end. I was like, the traffic's gonna be bad. I'm staying to the end. It was Rutgers got up early in the game. Iowa battled back, and then it went to a shootout, and Rutgers prevailed in the shootout. That got Rutgers back to a 500 record. So I think they're 4-4 in field hockey. So they're not ranked either. But they have a huge opportunity. Northwestern coming up this week, who's number 2. So that loss, it was an important win for field hockey as well, because they just lost 2 one-goal games to Princeton and Maryland, who are both in the top 25. That Princeton Rutgers field hockey connection in the Lanny household is a big deal. So
we haven't talked about it since it happened. What's going on, Pat? Bragging rights all over the place?
Yeah, big time. Yeah, so we'll see. I've been getting dogged. I can say that.
The kids wearing Princeton uniforms and stuff all over the house.
Yeah, but that's okay. You can strive to be an Ivy Leaguer in the Lanny household. Not that I am, obviously. You can hear the way I speak on this podcast.
We've got to find a reason to get Candace Lanny back, our favorite Lanny person on the podcast this year. Let's hope that there's a reason to preview some NCAA tournament game, rooting for the field hockey teams. All right, anything else before we sign off?
Really quickly, Lino Mark, a 3-star guard out of California for basketball, is announcing his commitment on October 2nd, which I'm fairly certain is Wednesday. And he has a Final Four of Rutgers, USC, Seton Hall, and I am blanking on the 4th one, but it doesn't matter. Trilly Donovan, the unofficial announcer of where kids are going to commit, predicted that Rutgers will land the guard from California who took a trip to Piscataway officially last week, I think, or 2 weeks ago. I have no reason to believe Mr. Donovan is incorrect. So if that comes to fruition, he would be the 2nd commit of the 2025 class. That's all I got.
All right. Good job this week. We'll be back later in the week to preview Nebraska. Thanks for listening. And kids, please catch your kickoffs. Do not let that bounce, despite what you've heard in the podcast. We'll see you later in the week. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant. To participate in the conversation and receive live updates about the Scarlet Knights directly to your phone, sign up at nj.com/insider.